Hey folks, and welcome back to West Yorkshire Retro Gamer. I just thought I'd have a look at the Premier League table after 2 games gone and just see where the teams are, who they've played against, and ultimately, is each club where it should be after 2 games? That is the big question. So, let's have a look at it all. I'll start from, I'll start from the top and I'll work down. Why not? So, Arsenal, top of the league due to their superior goal difference. Played 2-1-2, obviously no draws, no losses. Plus 6 goal difference, they've scored 6 and not even conceded yet. And have the maximum 6 points. In terms of who they played against, they beat Man United 1-0 away from home and walloped my team Leeds 5-0 at the Emirates. Their next opponent is Liverpool. That could be a tasty one. With those 2 results for Arsenal, I mean, you can't argue it. There would have been a slight chance maybe that Man United, when you look at the fixtures before the games have been played, there was maybe a slight chance that maybe there'd be a draw between Man United and Arsenal. But that was a bit of, maybe even that was a bit of a stretch. It was obvious that Arsenal were going to beat Leeds. Even me as a Leeds fan can't argue that one. And that's before the match was played. So, yep, for Arsenal to be, on the basis that 3 teams have got the maximum 6 points so far, it's pretty fair to say that Arsenal deserve to be where they are after those first 2 games, without a doubt. And they look pretty good. I ain't gonna lie. They did lose Odegaard and Saka through injury against Leeds. But looking at the squad depth, I think they'll be fine. Tottenham, just 1 goal back from Arsenal in terms of the goal difference. But again, absolutely watertight at the back, having not conceded. So they're on plus 5. Their 2 wins have been a bit of a spanking on Burnley 3-0. That would be expected. And then this one, maybe a bit of a surprise. Away from home, beating Manchester City 2-0. So you'd have to say that on the balance of those fixtures, that Tottenham, and certainly based on how they were last season, I mean, they finished 17th last season and only got 38 points or something like that. They were dreadful. So to say that they've started the season with a maximum after having played, one of the teams that would be one of the favourites, for the title in Man City, you've got to say that Tottenham have made a very, very promising start for themselves. Obviously, it's a change of manager. They don't have Son up front anymore, so there's quite a bit of change going on there. So yeah, I mean, we've got to say maybe certainly at this early stage, Tottenham are maybe a little higher than what people might have expected them to be. Certainly having played Man City. Again, a bit like the Arsenal Man U game, maybe there could have been a draw. Maybe some people might have had Tottenham and Man City drawing, perhaps. But you'd certainly have Tottenham beating Burnley. Again, these are just comments that people would make before the match starts, obviously. And then moving on to the other team that's got a maximum so far, this is Liverpool. So the difference with them is that they've scored 7, which is more than Arsenal and Tottenham, but they've conceded 4. So they've only got a plus 3. Their matches were against Bournemouth and Newcastle. Now, against Newcastle, maybe people might have thought, maybe Newcastle could nick a draw against Liverpool. You'd probably expect Liverpool at home to be beating Bournemouth, I would say, personally. Now, don't get me wrong, they've beaten, they've beaten them, but despite the large number of goals that Liverpool have scored so far, is there not a bit of a concern of the goals conceded? 4 goals conceded in 2 games for Liverpool. Now, if they lose any of their strike force, obviously Ekitiki's got off to a good start, hasn't he? But if they lose any of their primary forwards to injury or suspension, then they're obviously going to have to start playing the backups. But then they've also got a bit of a leaky defence based on these first 2 games. Certainly compared to Arsenal and Tottenham. Again, you could say on paper that maybe Liverpool's first 2 games are, from an overall perspective, are a little bit tougher. But Bournemouth finished mid-table last season. They were quite decent, and Newcastle obviously were vying for Europe. Whereas Burnley were Championship, but then obviously they played Man City, did Tottenham, and with Arsenal. Man United, okay, they had a bad season last season, but then obviously they played Leeds, who again came up from the Championship. So, yeah, I think maybe there's a bit of a concern for Liverpool in terms of their backline. I wonder if something needs to change there, if they are going to be serious title contenders, because you can score all the goals you want for fun, but if you don't keep it tight at the back as well, there's other teams that will score nearly as many as you, just like Arsenal and Tottenham have, but they're not conceding. That's a big thing for me, and that's quite big in my opinion. So now moving on to the teams that have gotten 1 win and 1 draw so far, because there's a couple of them. So in 4th place we've got Chelsea, who have got 1 win, 1 draw. Scored 5, so plenty scored again there. Only conceded 1 so far, so +4 goal difference, 4 points on the board. Their draw was a surprising one against Crystal Palace. That's got to be a couple of points dropped for Chelsea, considering Chelsea were at home, hasn't it? Again, Palace are they're always seen as a mid-table team, aren't they? So I think Chelsea might be a little disappointed with that one. On the flip side, they will at West Ham 5-1. So interesting that Chelsea have played 2 London-based teams so far, and their next one is against Fulham. Have Chelsea got an issue? Doing long distance travel. That's bonkers that their first 3 games are all going to be London-based clubs. Weird one, that. But a Chelsea where you'd expect them to be. I think Chelsea could have seen themselves as being, the same as the top 3 right now. I think they might see that draw with Crystal Palace as a bit of a downer. In 5th you got Nottingham Forest, who again, like Chelsea, have got a 1 win and 1 draw. But they've scored 1 less and conceded 1 more than what Chelsea have. So they've got a 4 and a 2 with a +2 goal difference. 4 points on the board. Their win came against Brentford. I think with everything that's happened in the summer with Brentford, I think a lot of people probably, and with Forest being at home, I think people probably had Forest beating Brentford there. And then a draw with Palace. Yeah, I could see Forest and Palace drawing before the match had been played. Yeah, so I think Forest have got what what people probably would have expected them to. And Forest's next game is against West Ham apparently, so that's, that's another one that I think maybe they'll be expected to win, because West Ham are terrible at the minute. Who's next? Man City. Oh, down in 6th. Who would have had City as low as 6th after 2 games? Well, let's just see who they've played. So it's 1 win and 1 loss, scored 4, conceded 2, plus 2 goal difference, 3 points on the board. They walloped Wolves 4-0, but then lost to Tottenham 2-0. I think maybe Man City are maybe at least 1 point lower than what they would have expected themselves to be at this stage of the season. I think they just said at the start of the season, at home we should at least be drawing against Tottenham. You'd definitely expect Man City to wallop Wolves. There's no doubt in my mind on that one. Next match against Brighton. Okay. Right, next, Sunderland. Who would have had Sunderland as high as 7th? After 2 games? Nobody. I don't even think Sunderland fans would have expected themselves to have been that high. They've got 1 win, 1 loss as well. They've scored 3, conceded 2, so a plus 1 goal difference, 3 points on the board. Their win came against this faltering, floundering West Ham team. It was at home, but then so this next one this has really brought Sunderland down to earth a little bit, I would think. They lost to Burnley. One of the other teams that came up from the Championship along with Sunderland, lost 2-0 away from home, so it was at Turf Moor. But you've got to be looking at that and thinking, like on paper, before the matches were played, you'd think that Sunderland would probably lose to West Ham and maybe draw against Burnley, possibly. And Sunderland's next match is against Brentford. Now that to me kind of screams, another one that Sunderland could get something from, I think. Next is Everton. Again, another team on 3 points with 1 win, 1 loss. Scored 2, conceded 1, plus 1 goal difference. So that means that Sunderland are ahead of Everton on goals scored, because even their goal difference is identical. Everton, as we know, lost to Leeds, and probably deservedly so, even though the penalty decision has been one of the most controversial things I've seen all season already in terms of people's reactions to it. Some people say it definitely was, some people say it definitely wasn't, and there's others that are not sure. But I think over the balance of play, I think over the whole match, I think Leeds were the better team. And then, Everton bounced back, very nicely. Their first home game at the new stadium, beating Brighton 2-0. And the next game is against Wolves. So that, you've got to think that Everton, if Everton want to really kickstart their season after losing to Leeds, which on paper you would have expected Everton to have at least drawn against Leeds, if not beaten Leeds. The next one's against Wolves. So you've got to think that Everton will be looking to target that Wolves game with another win, or at least a draw, of course. Moving on to Bournemouth. The first team on the list to have a negative goal difference, and that's partially due to the fact that their first game was a loss to Liverpool that ended up 4-2. That was quite a high scoring game. So with Bournemouth, they've scored 3, conceded 4, minus 1 goal difference. As I say, lost to Liverpool, which is, there's no shame in that. But they beat Wolves, and they only beat them 1-0. But next up, Bournemouth have got Tottenham. That'll be tough for them. So yeah, I think on balance of play there, you'd expect them to lose to Liverpool and at least draw or win against Wolves, I think. So yeah, I think Bournemouth are about where they should be right now. Brentford, as I say, I didn't have any confidence in what Brentford were doing for this season because they'd brought in Andrews as manager and they'd lost a couple of key players as well. So I was kind of expecting Brentford to struggle this season. As it happens, they currently find themselves in 10th. Again, another team that's had 1 win and 1 loss, and they are on a -1 goal difference, having scored 2 and conceded 3. 3 points on the board. So they lost 3-1 to Nottingham Forest, but beat Aston Villa 1-0. Now that's gotta give them some credit. I wouldn't have had, even at home, I wouldn't have had them beating Villa. Maybe squeak a draw if they were lucky. But no, they'll have been well impressed with themselves beating Villa there. That's without a doubt. Then you got Burnley, and by the looks of it, this must now be on alphabetical order because Burnley's record's completely identical to Brentford. So 1 win, 1 loss, 2 scored, 3 conceded, -1 goal difference, 3 points. Burnley lost to Tottenham, no shame in that, but they beat Sunderland, and I think that's a crucial win for Burnley, because it's against a team that's just come up with them. That's the kind of game that Burnley need to look to be winning to have any chance of staying in the division. Burnley's next match, that's against Man U. I have no idea how that one will end. Brentford's next match, by the way, is against Sunderland. Brentford's next one's against Sunderland. That could be an interesting one. That could be quite close. My team Leeds, 12th position. I'd have taken 12th after 2 games. I have no issues with that. The only thing I do have a slight issue with is the fact that we were so porous at the back against Arsenal. I expected Arsenal to beat us, but I thought we would have shown a little bit more defensive solidarity, if you like. Just to keep things tight. Don't make silly errors, and a couple of the Arsenal goals could have been prevented quite easily. Very poor defensively. I would say at least 2 of those goals were easily preventable. The goal from the corner and the penalty, just awful defending from Leeds, really. The other 3 goals, you've got to say they were, just one of those. From Leeds' point of view, write it off. We were never going to get anything against Arsenal. They're too good at this moment in time. So I'm not dwelling on that. But as things stand for Leeds at this moment in time, 1 win, 1 loss, only having scored 1, and conceding 5. Now, the fact that we've only scored 1 does concern me a little, in the sense that it's from a Leeds perspective. Anyone that knows anything about Leeds United right now, it is clear we need some striking reinforcements massively. We've got a championship strike force right now. That ain't going to cut it. We need, we've got Metcher and Calvert-Lewin on free transfers. While they might end up being decent players, they're not going to get you 12 to 15 goals in a season to help keep you up. They're just not. I don't think. So we need to be looking at bringing someone in that's going to really bag them goals. Because Piru's unproven at this level. Metcher and Calvert-Lewin are going to be hit and miss. Those are our three strikers right now. We need a fourth one, and we need one that's going to score more than what those three can. From a defence point of view, I mean, like defensively against Everton, really good. Really, really good. But against Arsenal, terrible. Now, does this mean that it's going to be almost like a repeat of the Bielsa season where we were getting walloped, 5-6, 7-0? We've got to tighten up. We've got to be more intelligent in the games where we're against teams that have got the extra quality. Because it was just too easy for Arsenal in the end. We didn't even, for the first half hour, or certainly until Arsenal got their first goal. I thought we were managing the game reasonably well, and then after that, as soon as they got one, you just knew they were going to score more. If we'd have kept it to 1-0 at half time, who knows? Maybe we could have narrowed it down to 4 or 3. But going in at 2-0 at half time was just a battering. And Leeds just crumbled in the second half, unfortunately. So as things stand, Leeds have a -4 goal difference, which after just 2 games is crap. But you've got to put it in context and look at who one of the teams is that we've just played. And bearing in mind, one of those teams that we've just played, we've got a clean sheet. So it is -4. It is 3 points. So it does put us bottom of the 3 points bracket, which is quite a large bracket. So win against Everton, very nice, but heavy loss against Arsenal, bloody horrible. Next match is against Newcastle. I mean, who knows? Who knows with Newcastle? I mean, such a strange start to the season for them, and they let Wilson go. Isak's not played. So it makes you wonder how they're coping up front at this moment in time. But they have just put 2 past Liverpool. So there's still obviously some quality there, and that'll have to be managed. I mean, do I expect Leeds to get anything against Newcastle? No, absolutely not. Before the season started, I was like, no, we ain't getting anything against them. And despite Newcastle having a bit of an iffy start to the season, at this stage that doesn't mean anything. So no, I'm pretty happy with the fact that Leeds have gotten a win under their belt after the first 2 games, and the fact that it's put us in that mid-table section, kind of between 8th and 12th, which is a good start. And you've got to say all 3 promoted sides, the fact that all 3 of them have started with 1 win and 1 loss, I think before the season started, I think all 3 of them would have taken that. And it's resulted in all 3 of them being kind of a mid-table kind of area. So well done all 3 of them, I would say. Next is Fulham. Played 2, drawn 2. And with a 2-2, 2 goals scored and 2 goals conceded. So 0 goal difference, 2 points on the board. Their draws came against Brighton. Yeah, I could have seen that, I think. And then Man U. I genuinely don't think that's actually a bad start by Fulham, personally. I think, when you look at where Fulham are at and you look at where Brighton have been at, in recent seasons. Man U, you just don't know what you're going to get with them at the minute. So yeah, I think Fulham are pretty much where you'd expect them to be after 2 games. Crystal Palace are the other one with the same record as Fulham, just slightly less on the goals. So 2 draws out of 2 games. They've only scored 1 and they've only conceded 1. So strike force not quite as good, defence a little better. Still 0 on the goal difference and 2 points. Their draws came against Chelsea, which is a very creditable draw, especially away from home for Palace. The draw at home was against Forest. Yeah, I could see that as a realistic result. So yeah, I'd say maybe, certainly from a results point of view, I'd say that Palace are about where you'd expect them. So after those 2 games. So yeah, as far as Fulham and Palace are concerned, Fulham's got Chelsea and Palace have Villa. Could be interesting. Newcastle, Leeds' next opponents. Bit of an iffy start for Newcastle. No wins on the board, only 1 draw and 1 loss. 2 goals scored, 3 conceded with a -1 goal difference, 1 point on the board. Their draw was against Villa. That's realistic, I would say. They finished next to each other last season, didn't they? So yeah, I could see that as, I'd say that's pretty realistic. And then a loss to Liverpool, I mean, it were only 3-2, it were close. So I don't think, when you look at the opposition that Newcastle have had so far, I don't think that's unrealistic. The overall position's not great, being as low as 15th, but you've got to look at who you've played. So yeah, I think that is actually realistic for Newcastle at this point. Man U, 16th, similar to where they finished last season. Sorry, I had to get that one in. No wins. You don't know how happy that makes me feel to see Man U having 0 wins after 2 games. I hope they have 0 wins for as long as possible. 1 draw, 1 loss, 1 goal scored, 2 conceded, -1 goal difference, 1 point on the board. Their loss was against Arsenal. So, I mean, with the start that Arsenal's made, you can't actually argue that one. Not really. But then a draw against Fulham. Alright, it was at Craven Cottage, but for the expectations that they would have and the money they've spent this summer, I think that draw might be looked at as a little bit iffy, to say the least. But Man U have got chance to make amends against Burnley. So they'll be at home, so I think most people would have them to beat Burnley, but who knows? I don't think you can really gauge what you're going to get from Man U at the minute. Moving on to 17th place Aston Villa. Who would have seen this after 2 games? Very low start for Villa. 0 wins, 1 draw, 1 loss. I mean, they're tight defensively. Christ, they've only conceded 1 goal, but they haven't scored yet. No goals at all for Aston Villa. That's shocking. -1 goal difference, obviously. Their draw came against Newcastle, which, as I say, was expected. The loss was against Brentford. That was a surprise. I wouldn't have seen Brentford being able to beat Villa after what's happened in the summer with Brentford. Absolutely not. That's a surprise to me, is that one. So, with that, it really puts Villa quite low down right now. I'm sure they'll change it. I'm sure they'll turn it around. The squad's good enough. Manager's good enough. The next team that they play is Palace. That could be another close one. based on the start of the season, I think. Moving on to Brighton. Look at this. Brighton in relegation zone after 2 games. No wins, 1 draw, 1 loss, scored 1, conceded 3. So -2 goal difference with a 1 point on the board. Their draw came against Fulham, which again, as I said before, was quite realistic. The loss was against Everton. First game at Everton's new ground. Maybe that had a part to play in it, perhaps, I don't know. But yeah, not great, is it? You know, they lost 2-0. That's convincing enough, isn't it? Based on a scoreline. Oh, and it don't get any easier for Brighton. Their next match is Man City. Oh boy. Brighton could find themselves in relegation zone longer than they thought they probably would see themselves there. So they're going to have to turn things around relatively soon if they want to get themselves up into top half again. And again, they're good enough. I mean, based on last season, they're certainly good enough to be in top half, but not a great start, is it? And then the bottom 2, I mean, position-wise, you can't argue, really. I mean, I had Wolves and West Ham as 2 of the possible teams, along with Brentford, that could be in a relegation battle at come the end of this season. And when you look at it, it's not pretty reading, is it? No wins or draws, 2 losses. No goals scored for Wolves. Ouch. 5 conceded and a -5 goal difference. Their losses came for a 4-0 walloping against Man City. Well, there's no shame in that, really. And then 1-0 loss against Bournemouth. Yeah, you could see that. You could see that being a possible thing. Next game against Everton, that's crucial. Because Wolves are at home for that, they're at Molineux, so I think that could be the first avenue where Wolves could get themselves off the mark. Because Everton away at Leeds were poor, they weren't very good at all. So I think Wolves might target that to get themselves off the mark. And then West Ham, what is going on? What is going on at the Hammers? Jesus, this is bad reading after 2 games. No wins, no draws, 2 losses, 1 goal scored, 8 conceded. 8 goals conceded. That is dire. That is absolutely rubbish. -7 goal difference. Obviously 0 points. Now, who's it come against? Losing 3-0 to Sunderland. If you lose to Sunderland, like 1-0, 2-1, 3-2, maybe people don't really look at it that, as being terrible. But 3-0? That's a walloping. When you consider that Sunderland had only just come up from Championship. And then the other loss was a 5-1 against Chelsea. Ugh. Again, a bit like Leeds losing, Leeds losing heavily to Arsenal. West Ham losing heavily to Chelsea. It's like, you're coming up against a top 4 team and you're going to be one of the teams near the bottom. So it's like, well, you can't just take it on chin. It hurts, right? It hurts to lose by that kind of margin in any match. And realistically, nobody should lose, by conceding 5 goals in 1 match against a team that's in their same division as themselves. West Ham's next match is against Nottingham Forest. I don't know if West Ham's going to get a win whilst they've got Potter in charge. I don't see it. I genuinely don't see it. You know, that's 2 games down and an absolutely terrible start. I genuinely could see, like, as long as West Ham keep Potter, and Karen Brady's just been singing Potter's praises recently as well. So that's a bit concerning for West Ham, is that? So yeah, there we go, folks. That's my little review. The reason I've done this is because the next match for everybody is a cup match, so it's the first little break from the league. So obviously everyone's going to be, you know, all 20 of these are going to be playing what you would expect to be considerably different lineups to what have featured in the first 2 games for each of these teams in the first 2 games of the season. Is every team where they would be expected to be after the first 2 games? More or less, I would say. Overall, having looked at all of that, I don't think there were too many shock results overall. Just 1 or 2 here and there, and again, if those results changed, you know, the table would look a little different, but not by a vast majority. So yeah, there we have it, folks. You've got all 3 promoted teams from the Championship, all comfortable mid-table. You know, 7th, 11th and 12th. It's really not bad going, is it? The top 4 currently, you'd probably expect them to be around that area come the end of the season. Man City are maybe a bit low. You know, you'd expect them to be a bit higher, perhaps. I mean, Forest had a decent season last season, so they're probably where they would be expected to be. Everton, I think, probably a lot of people would have had them bottom half, so they're maybe a little higher. Brentford, I think, are a lot higher than people had them. I think a lot of people did have Brentford being, you know, bottom half of the bottom half, if you like. You know, based on, or, you know, like certainly bottom 6, based on all the changes that have gone on in the summer for them. Fulham and Crystal Palace, yeah, probably about, you know, probably about where you'd expect them. Maybe 1 or 2 places higher, but nothing much more. Newcastle and Man U, I think you'd expect them. Well, you'd expect Newcastle to be a lot higher, and with the amount of money Man U spent, who knows. Villa, horribly low. You know, you wouldn't have expected Villa to be that low after 2 games. Same with Brighton. You know, they were a comfortable top half team last season, so you'd expect them to be a bit higher. And then Wolves and West Ham, I think they're probably about where you'd expect them in a sense. You'd expect both of them to be bottom 6, I would think. So yeah, there we go, folks. It's an interesting look at the table after, you know, after 2 games doesn't mean a right lot, does it? But I think for the 3 promoted teams, for example, the fact that all 3 of them have been able to get 1 win out of the first 2 games, I think they'd be quite satisfied with that. You know, they'd be looking at it wondering, where's the first win going to come? Well, they've been able to get the first win within the first 2 games. You know, that's going to be a massive confidence boost for all 3 of them, I think. So we'll see. We'll see where everyone's at, either at the next cup game or the next international break, and we'll see if, you know, I'll probably do a few of these throughout the season, and see where everyone's at, and if the clubs are where you'd expect them to be. So yeah, I'll leave it at that, folks. Big thank you for watching. Do please give the video a thumb up, like, and do please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Lots more football and video game content coming your way very soon. So yeah, do please keep an eye out for that. Interesting interesting table after 2 games, don't you think, folks? But put your comments about it put your thoughts in the comments down below, and let me know where you expected everyone to be, after 2 games. But in the meantime, enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye for now.